Most Porsches get traded in before they ever hit 100,000 miles. The owner sees one expensive repair quote, panics, and dumps the car at a loss. But there is a small group of owners, maybe 1%, who are quietly pushing their 911s, Caymans and Macans past 300,000 miles without a single catastrophic repair. Original engine, original transmission, still running like the day it left Stuttgart. They are not lucky. They just know 20 things that the other 99% never learned. Number 20. Change the oil at half the factory interval. This is the foundation everything else on this list is built on. Porsche's service indicator can push oil changes out to 10,000 or even 15,000 miles depending on your driving patterns. That interval was calibrated for warranty period survival, not for reaching 300,000 miles. Independent Porsche specialists consistently recommend 5,000 to 7,000 mile oil change intervals, especially on turbocharged engines where oil temperatures run significantly higher. The flat 6 in a 911 and the turbo 4s in the Macan and 718 put enormous thermal stress on oil. By 10,000 miles, that oil has lost a measurable amount of its protective properties. A $70 oil change every 5,000 miles is the cheapest insurance you can buy for a Porsche engine. Over 300,000 miles, that habit alone probably saves you tens of thousands in repairs that never happen. Number 19. Keep a written service log for everything. This sounds tedious, and it is, but every single high-mileage Porsche that rolls into a specialist shop with 300,000 miles on the clock has a paper trail. Every oil change, every fluid swap, every filter replacement gets logged with the date, mileage, and shop that did the work. A written record forces you to stay honest about your intervals. When you can see that your last coolant flush was 45,000 miles ago, you stop telling yourself it can wait another season. Without a log, maintenance becomes guesswork. And guesswork is what sends Porsche engines to the rebuilder. Number 18. Use premium top-tier fuel every single time. Porsche engines are tuned for 91 octane or higher. Most owners know that. But the 1% take it further by exclusively using top-tier certified gasoline, which contains higher concentrations of detergent additives than standard premium. Over hundreds of thousands of miles, those detergents prevent carbon buildup on intake valves and fuel injectors. On Porsche's direct injection engines, carbon deposits are a serious problem because no fuel washes over the intake valves during normal operation. A few extra cents per gallon over the life of the car saves thousands in carbon cleaning and injector replacements down the road. Number 17. Warm up the engine before driving with any enthusiasm. The 1% never floor a cold Porsche. They let the engine idle for 30 to 60 seconds, then drive gently for the first 5 to 10 minutes until the oil temperature gauge reaches normal operating range. This gives the oil time to circulate through every bearing surface, reach the variable valve timing system, and fully pressurize the turbo oil feed lines before any real load hits the engine. Porsche flat 6 engines have a horizontally opposed layout, which means oil has to travel through longer passages to reach all the critical surfaces compared to an inline engine. Cold oil is thick and flows slowly. Driving hard on cold oil accelerates wear on every moving part inside the engine. Number 16. Let the turbo cool down after hard driving. Modern Porsches have an after-run coolant pump, but the 1% still let the engine idle for 30 to 60 seconds after sustained highway driving or spirited runs before shutting it off. This allows the turbocharger to shed heat while the oil pump is still actively circulating. Shutting down immediately after hard driving can cause oil to carbonize inside the turbo bearing housing, forming deposits that gradually restrict oil flow. Those deposits are cumulative. You will not notice the damage after one hot shutdown. You will notice it after 1,000 of them, when the turbo starts making noises it should not be making. Number 15. Check the oil level every 2 weeks. Porsche considers oil consumption of up to half a quart per 1,000 miles to be within factory specification on many of its engines. That means your engine could burn through a significant portion of its oil capacity between changes, and Porsche would call it normal. The 1% do not wait for the dashboard warning light, which only triggers when the oil has dropped to the absolute minimum safe level. They check the oil level through the PCM vehicle status screen or manually every 2 weeks. Running low on oil, even briefly, starves the turbocharger, accelerates bore wear, and degrades the variable valve timing system. A 30-second check prevents a repair bill that could easily reach 5 figures. Before we get deep into this list, quick thing. The data behind this channel shows that close to 80% of the people watching right now are not subscribed. You keep showing up for Porsche content, but without that subscription, the algorithm has no reason to surface the next video for you. If you have made it this far, you clearly care about keeping your car on the road for the long haul. Hit subscribe so you don't miss what comes next. Number 14. Flush the brake fluid every 2 years without exception. Brake fluid is hygroscopic. It absorbs moisture from the air through microscopic pores in brake hoses and seals. As water content increases, the fluid's boiling point drops and internal corrosion starts eating away at brake lines, calipers, and ABS components from the inside. Porsche recommends a brake fluid flush every 2 years, and the 1% actually follow through on it. Most owners skip it because the brakes still feel fine. But by the time you notice a problem with contaminated brake fluid, the corrosion damage to your ABS module is already done. A brake fluid flush costs about $150. An ABS module replacement costs several thousand. Number 13. Service the PDK transmission fluid on schedule, not never. Porsche originally marketed the PDK as having lifetime fluid. The 1% know that lifetime means the expected life of the transmission under ideal conditions within the warranty period, not the actual life of the fluid. PDK fluid lubricates the dual clutch packs, provides hydraulic pressure for gear selection, and cools critical internal components. Over time, it breaks down from heat cycles, and metal particles from normal wear contaminate it. Most specialists recommend changing PDK fluid every 40 to 60,000 miles for street-driven cars, and more frequently for tracked cars. The service requires PWIS diagnostic access for temperature monitoring and adaptation resets. Skipping it entirely because the manual said lifetime is how owners end up facing a $25,000 transmission replacement that was entirely preventable. If you are finding this helpful, hit subscribe. We cover Porsche ownership and maintenance tips every week. Now, let's keep going. Number 12. Replace spark plugs and ignition coils proactively. Porsche recommends spark plug replacement every 60,000 miles. The 1% hit that interval or come in slightly earlier. Worn spark plugs cause incomplete combustion, which means unburned fuel washing past piston rings and contaminating the oil. That contaminated oil then circulates through the entire engine. Ignition coils get replaced at the same time because a failing coil causes misfires and dumps raw fuel into the catalytic converter. One ignored spark plug can cascade into a dead catalytic converter, which is a repair that dwarfs the cost of plugs and coils combined. Number 11. Flush the cooling system on a strict schedule. Porsche engines use aluminum extensively, and aluminum reacts badly with degraded or incorrect coolant. The 1% flush and replace their coolant every 30 to 40,000 miles using the correct Porsche specification coolant. They also inspect coolant hoses, the thermostat, and the expansion tank for cracks during every service. A cooling system failure while driving can overheat a Porsche engine in minutes and warp the cylinder heads. The flush costs a couple $100. A warped head on a flat 6 costs a small fortune. Number 10. Fix oil leaks immediately instead of monitoring them. Almost every Porsche develops oil leaks over time. Rear main seals, valve cover gaskets, oil cooler seals. They all eventually start weeping. Most owners watch the leak, top off the oil, and plan to deal with it later. The 1% fix leaks the moment they appear, not because a small leak is an emergency, but because leaking oil drips onto other components. It degrades rubber hoses, wiring insulation, and engine mounts. On Porsche models with the engine in the rear, oil leaking onto the exhaust manifold is a genuine fire hazard. Every leak you ignore is quietly damaging something else you cannot see. Number 9. Replace the serpentine belt and tensioner before they fail. The serpentine belt drives the alternator, water pump, power steering pump, and air conditioning compressor. When it snaps, you lose all of those systems simultaneously. If the water pump stops, the engine can overheat in minutes. The 1% replace the belt and tensioner together every 60,000 miles as preventive maintenance, well before any squealing or cracking appears. A serpentine belt costs almost nothing. An engine that overheated because the belt failed on the highway costs everything. Number 8. Use an independent Porsche specialist, not a chain shop. The 1% never take their Porsche to a generic oil change chain or even the dealership for routine work past warranty. They find an independent shop that specializes in Porsche and German vehicles. These shops have PRWiz diagnostic tools, technicians who understand the specific failure patterns of each Porsche engine generation, and access to OEM quality parts at prices significantly below dealer markup. A specialist who sees Porsches every single day will catch an emerging problem that a generalist would miss entirely. The relationship between a knowledgeable technician and a high-mileage Porsche owner is the single most underrated factor in reaching 300,000 miles. Number 7. Avoid short trips whenever possible. Porsche engines are engineered for sustained driving at operating temperature. Short trips of 5 or 10 minutes where the engine never fully warms up are quietly destructive. When the engine does not get hot enough, moisture and fuel vapors collect in the oil and never burn off. That contaminated oil accelerates wear on bearings, piston rings, and the variable valve timing system. The 1% either combine short errands into longer drives or take the car on a 20-minute highway run at least once a week to burn off accumulated moisture. This is especially critical for the flat 6 engines where the horizontally opposed cylinder layout makes them more sensitive to condensation buildup in the oil system. Number 6. Replace engine and cabin air filters aggressively. Porsche recommends changing the engine air filter around every 30,000 miles. The 1% do it closer to every 15 to 20,000 miles. A clogged engine air filter restricts airflow, which forces the turbocharger to work harder to deliver the same volume of air. That extra load generates more heat, more boost pressure fluctuations, and faster bearing wear inside the turbo housing. The cabin filter gets swapped just as frequently because a blocked cabin filter forces the blower motor to overwork, and blower motor replacements on Porsches are not cheap. 2 cheap filters, easy to forget, the 1% never forget. Number 5. Address the IMS bearing on affected models. If you own a Porsche 911 or Boxster built between 1997 and 2008, you need to know about the intermediate shaft bearing. The IMS bearing supports the shaft that drives the camshafts, and Porsche used a sealed ball bearing that can fail without warning, causing catastrophic engine damage. Repair costs after a failure can exceed $30,000, and many owners simply scrap the car. The 1% do not wait for the failure. They replace the IMS bearing with an upgraded aftermarket solution proactively, ideally during a clutch service when the transmission is already removed. They also change their oil more frequently with high-quality, fully synthetic oil and install a magnetic drain plug to catch ferrous particles early. If you own an affected model and you have never addressed the IMS bearing, this is the most important item on this entire list for you. Number 4. Install an oil catch can on direct injection models. Porsche's direct injection engines spray fuel directly into the combustion chamber, which means no fuel washes over the intake valves during normal operation. Oil vapor from the crankcase ventilation system coats those valves instead, and over time, thick carbon deposits build up and restrict airflow. The 1% install an oil catch can that intercepts those oil vapors before they reach the intake manifold. It does not eliminate carbon buildup entirely, but it dramatically slows it down and extends the interval between cleanings. A quality catch can cost a few $100s installed and pays for itself many times over in prevented maintenance. Number 3. Schedule carbon cleaning every 50 to 70,000 miles. Even with a catch can, carbon deposits still accumulate on the intake valves of every direct injection Porsche. By 70 to 80,000 miles, those deposits can seriously impact performance, throttle response, and fuel efficiency. The 1% schedule walnut shell blasting, a process where crushed walnut shells are blasted at high pressure against the intake valves to strip away carbon buildup. The procedure costs around $800 to $1,500 depending on the shop, but it restores airflow and combustion efficiency to near factory levels. Skipping it leads to increasingly rough idle, hesitation under acceleration, and eventually misfires that can damage catalytic converters, costing several $1,000s each. Number 2. Monitor for cylinder bore scoring on affected engines. Certain Porsche engines, particularly the 3-litre and 4-litre V6 units in the Macan and some Cayenne models, as well as the older M96 and M97 flat sixes, have a documented history of cylinder bore scoring. Vertical scratches form on the cylinder walls when lubrication is insufficient, and once scoring begins, it accelerates rapidly. The repair requires a full engine rebuild or replacement, both of which can exceed 50% of the car's value. The 1% have their cylinders bore scoped periodically and run oil analysis to catch early signs of scoring before it becomes catastrophic. They also maintain shorter oil change intervals with high-quality, fully synthetic oil. Early detection through bore scoping during a pre-purchase inspection is also a must for anyone buying a used Porsche with one of these engines. Number 1. Drive smoothly and treat the car like it has to last. This is the habit that ties every other habit together. The 1% do not baby their Porsches. They drive them the way they were designed to be driven. But they do it smoothly. They accelerate progressively, allowing their engine and PDK to build speed gradually, rather than slamming the throttle from every stoplight. They brake early and with measured pressure instead of diving for the pedal at the last second. They take corners at speeds that load the suspension evenly instead of hammering the outer wheel bearings and bushings. A Porsche engine and transmission driven smoothly for 300,000 miles experiences dramatically less stress than one driven aggressively for 150,000 miles. None of the maintenance habits on this list matter if you are shock loading the drivetrain every single day. The 1% understand that longevity is not about babying the car. It is about respecting the machine enough to let every system operate within its design limits, consistently, for as long as you own it. There is no secret formula to making a Porsche last 300,000 miles. It is just 20 habits done consistently, without shortcuts, for as long as you own the car. The 1% are not lucky, they are disciplined. If you found this helpful, consider subscribing and we will see you in the next one.